Hi, my name is Marcy Sproul, and welcome to this presentation on dyslexia. In this video, we will explore the definition of dyslexia, the causes, and how it is treated. You will learn the common signs and symptoms and early indicators of dyslexia, as well as several assessments that are used to diagnose it. I'm also going to talk about accommodations that teachers can make in the classroom and interventions that help support students with dyslexia. I'm also going to talk about goals that we can set to help students become more engaged in learning and help them to improve their reading skills. Before we begin discussing dyslexia, I'd like to talk a little bit about the reading process and give you some definitions that will help to give you some background on the various components that contribute to this disorder. First, let's talk about the act of reading. The act of reading involves two basic operations. These are decoding and comprehension. Decoding is translating the printed word into sound, or what we think of as the act of reading. Comprehension involves understanding what the word or group of words mean. Learning to read begins with the alphabetic principle, which is the understanding that the letters we see on the page represent sounds. We learn to read by understanding that the symbol of the letter is represented by a sound. For instance, we learn that this symbol A can have a sound like A, the short sound, or A, the long sound. The sound of this letter is called a phoneme. We then learn that these phonemes can be put together to form words. The word cat has three phonemes, k, a, t. When we blend those sounds together, we get the word cat. The process of reading instruction begins by teaching children the letters of the alphabet and the sounds that are associated with each letter. They begin to understand that words are made up of these phonemes, and words can be strung together to form sentences. An important concept in reading instruction and early literacy is phonological awareness. This is the understanding that oral language is divided into smaller elements. Sentences can be divided into individual words, words can be divided into syllables, and they can be divided into their individual sounds, or phonemes. This awareness provides the foundation for learning to read. This awareness is the ability to recognize and work with sounds in language. Some of the components of phonological awareness are being able to count the number of words in a sentence, identify words that rhyme, counting and breaking down words into syllables, noticing similar sounds, and being able to produce words that rhyme. It also involves phonemic awareness, which is the ability to identify words that begin with or end with the same sound, identify the first, middle, or last sound in a word, or blend sounds to say a word, or segment that word into their separate sounds. Like I know that cat has three sounds, k, a, t. This understanding helps us to begin to decode or read words. Sousa tells us that successful decoding involves three neural networks in our brain, all working together. For example, if we see the printed word bug, our visual processing system puts the symbols together. Our auditory processing system hears the sounds in our brain, and the executive system processing allows us to understand what the word means, which may be why you cringe at the word bug, if you hate bugs. So as you can see, this awareness of letter-sound relationships is an important component of learning to read. Phonological awareness and phonemic awareness set the stage to learn phonics, which is the sound of letter patterns and their sounds. This is what we typically use when we sound out words. So now let's talk about dyslexia. Dyslexia is a reading disorder, and the International Dyslexia Association describes it as a specific learning disorder that originates in the brain, is characterized by difficulties with accurate or fluent word recognition, poor spelling, and decoding abilities. These challenges typically result from difficulties in phonological components of reading. Because of these difficulties, individuals with dyslexia may also experience problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experiences that impede the growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. In other words, students with dyslexia typically read less than their peers who don't have reading problems, which means that they're not developing their background knowledge, their vocabulary skills, and they're not getting enough practice in reading. All of these things help to contribute to successful reading. Dyslexia is a disorder that occurs due to structural differences in the brain. Researchers have found that readers with dyslexia use different neural systems in the brain, and that the regions in the brain that are involved in reading show less efficient processing. They have also found that there are structural abnormalities in the brain. There is a genetic component that can be passed on from parents to children, and although genetics plays an ongoing role, there are important environmental factors which can influence a child's development of reading skills. These include early intervention, the number of quality books that are available, the amount of oral reading children are exposed to, the size of the classroom, and the amount of opportunities for reading. Phonological and phonemic awareness are concepts that are taught in early childhood. Researchers have identified early warning signs that may be present in preschool and kindergarten children. These early warning signs include trouble with learning nursery rhymes and identifying rhyming words, difficulty recognizing rhyming patterns, as featured in the words top, mop, and hop, struggling to learn and remember letter names of the alphabet, difficulty recognizing letters in their own name, mispronouncing familiar words, difficulty associating sounds with letters, difficulty understanding that words can come apart. Mather and Wendling also describe indicators of dyslexia, and we may see these in older children as well. And these include difficulty learning rhymes, difficulty learning the names and sounds of the letters of the alphabet, confusing letters and words that have a similar appearance, confusing letters that have similar sounds, reversing letters and words, trouble arranging letters in the correct order when spelling a word, spelling the same word differently on the same page, spelling words the way they sound instead of the way they look, and difficulty pronouncing multisyllabic words. Next, we're going to talk about assessments that can be given to diagnose dyslexia. Dyslexia is a complex disorder, and there are several areas that must be assessed. So it's not just giving a student one or two assessment tests. We're really looking at a comprehensive list of skills and knowledge. These are the areas that must be examined when considering the diagnosis of dyslexia: phonological awareness, rapid automatized naming, processing speed, memory span and working memory, and word reading, spelling, and fluency. Poor phonological awareness involves mispronouncing words, difficulty remembering sound and letter relationships, difficulty spelling or pronouncing nonsense words that are phonetically regular. So if I looked at the word TAM, I would use my phonics knowledge, I would use my knowledge of sound and letters to pronounce the word tam. Trouble using phonics to pronounce unfamiliar words, difficulty distinguishing between sounds that are similar. Another skill that we look at as an important factor associated with dyslexia is rapid automatized naming. And this is the ability to name familiar objects or symbols rapidly. So children would be shown familiar objects, words, colors, or letters, and asked to name them as quickly as they can. This is connected to reading accuracy, speed, and comprehension. This is also related to fluency, which is the ability to read effortlessly and with automaticity, or just being able to automatically know what the word is when they look at it. We also look at processing speed. Automaticity of word recognition and reading rate appear to be impacted by an individual's cognitive processing speed. So this is another area that is assessed, and this includes visual perception, auditory perception, reaction time, and motor speed. So an example of this type of assessment is asking students to circle the matching numbers in a row of digits as quickly as they can. Another area is working memory and memory span. According to Mather and Wendling, memory span involves the ability to listen to information and then repeat it verbatim in a short period of time, usually seconds. Working memory involves being able to hold information in one's mind to use it in some way or manipulate it. An example of working memory is listening to a sequence of numbers and then being able to repeat the numbers back in reversed order. So we would need to hold that sequence of numbers in our heads long enough for us to figure out how to reverse those numbers. And then we look at a student's ability to decode words, their spelling skills, the amount of sight vocabulary that they know, and their fluency. There are a lot of different assessments that can be used to assess the various skills and knowledge that are associated with dyslexia, and we're going to take a look at 4 of them. The first one is the comprehensive test of phonological processing. It can be given to students starting at age 5, and it measures phonological awareness skills, such as the ability to delete sounds in words, blend sounds together, match sounds, name objects rapidly. It also tests memory for digits, numbers, and also asks students to repeat non-words, so their ability to repeat back a non-word. The second test is the Woodcock-Johnson test of cognitive ability, and this covers 5 different academic domains, and it includes reading, written language, and oral language. There are 22 tests altogether, and according to Mather and Wendling, processing speed is covered in these tests. There are 6 tests that measure various reading and pre-reading skills, including broad reading, brief reading, basic reading skills, reading comprehension, phoneme-grapheme knowledge, or letter-sound relationships, phonemic awareness, and fluency. And then there are also 6 tests that cover writing skills. And the next test we're going to look at is the Stanford Binet 5th edition. According to Mather and Wendling, this test can be used to test working memory, visual memory, and verbal working memory. The areas that the test covers are abstract and visual reasoning, quantitative reasoning, short-term memory skills, and verbal reasoning. The Dora K-12 series is the diagnostic online reading assessment, and it's given to students in kindergarten through 12th grade. There are 8 subtests that evaluate reading skills, and these cover phonemic awareness, phonics, word recognition, high-frequency words, oral vocabulary. Dyslexia is addressed by providing interventions in reading instruction in multiple areas based on the child's need. This is determined by multiple assessments, observation by the teacher and other professionals, such as a resource specialist or literacy specialist that the student is working with. Students need direct and systematic instruction in multiple areas, including phonological awareness, phonics, word recognition skills, and fluency. Phonological instruction can begin with rhyming tasks and then moving on to more complex activities. The most important tasks are blending sounds together to form words and being able to segment those words back into their separate sounds. In early literacy, we teach letters and their corresponding sounds, but older students also need direct instruction and reminders in this area. We need to provide direct instruction in phonics and letter sound associations. Students should have systematic instruction in learning letter patterns and their sounds. An example of this is learning that the words that end in AY have the A sound, and then they would learn words that follow that pattern, such as pay, stay, play, gray, and spray. They would learn these patterns and these words in isolation, but then they should also have the chance to practice them while reading text. Teachers can provide students with decodable texts, which feature controlled vocabulary and mostly consist of words that conform to the regular phonics rules that the students are learning. This allows students to apply the skills that they're learning in more authentic reading situations. So they need to learn the words in isolation, but then they also need to be actually reading. Teachers can also instruct students in structural analysis, which means analyzing words and breaking them down into their parts and patterns, their syllable patterns. The word parts that we look at include prefixes and suffixes, inflectional endings, which are added to change the meaning of a word. If we add the letter S to girl, then it becomes girls. So in this case, that S is an inflectional ending. We can also look at contractions and parts that make up compound words. Another intervention is to provide instruction in high-frequency words or sight words. So these are words that frequently show up in reading materials, and they may be regularly spelled or irregularly spelled words. Teachers can work with students to increase their sight word recognition by giving them word lists or charts that they can use for speed drills so that they can practice recognizing those words quicker. In addition to working with students in phonological awareness and word recognition, it's important that students read on a regular basis and be exposed to fluent reading as much as possible. So it's very helpful to read aloud to students, and this is also important for older readers as well. Giving students audiobooks and having them read the text while they listen can be a really effective way to increase their reading time. And it allows them to work on their reading skills independently. In addition to explicit instruction and word recognition, there are several strategies recommended for reading aloud to help improve students' fluency. These include providing explicit modeling of fluent reading and give the students a chance to practice their own fluency. Repeated reading with feedback is a process in which the student reads a short passage multiple times while the teacher records the number of errors that were made and the time it took for the student to read the passage. Students are able to monitor their progress as the teacher records the information. This can help them to pay more attention to the words that they may be struggling with and give them multiple opportunities to read the passage correctly. Another strategy is paired reading. Students work with another student who has a higher reading level. The students take turns reading short passages. This allows students to practice their oral reading as well as hear another fluent reader. Another technique is echo reading, in which the teacher reads a sentence out loud and then the student reads it back to the teacher. All three of these strategies are helpful for improving fluency in that they are providing students repeated practice in reading and providing exposure to fluent readers. So now let's talk about accommodations. Accommodations in the classroom help students to access the information that is being presented in the classroom, as well as demonstrate their abilities and knowledge that they have gained. They allow students to participate to a greater degree and should be part of the normal teaching and learning process. Accommodations can include the way information is presented, the way students are tested or assessed, or the way students respond to the material. When presenting lessons, we can provide students with typed notes or outlines of the lessons to help them take notes and follow along, and we can also highlight keywords and important ideas on worksheets. To help students in reading class materials, we can give them colored strips or bookmarks to help them focus on one line of text when they're reading printed materials. We can also give them audiobooks for reading and have them use tablets that use text-to-speech software and speech-to-text software, as well as other apps that can help them read or write. Other assistive technologies include the LiveScribe Smart Pen, which keeps track of what the student writes, as well as records audio and can play it back. There's a speech recognition program called Dragon Naturally Speaking that can help students who have limitations in typing or writing, as well as those who have trouble finding the right words to say. To help students with writing, we can provide sentence starters that give them guidance in how they should begin a written response. And remember that struggling readers may take up to 3 times longer to complete their work than their peers without reading difficulties. So allow students extended time for tests and assignments. Provide scheduling that is flexible. Break up long lessons or activities into shorter periods of time, and allow students to complete them in multiple sittings instead of just one. Also remember to allow students to take frequent breaks. Students may need more practice and exposure to the material they're learning, so it's helpful to provide supplemental materials such as games, computer software programs that provide additional practice or learning, and peer teaching or cooperative learning activities. Finally, it's important to use a multisensory approach. Use a lot of visuals, allow for technology, provide activities that allow students to move around the classroom, and provide cooperative learning groups. Next, I'd like to talk about setting up a reinforcement system to help promote student engagement and participation, and setting goals to help monitor progress and defining target skills that we want to work on with the student. Students with dyslexia may often avoid participating in reading and writing activities or completing assignments due to the difficulties that they experience in reading. To encourage them to participate, to read more, or complete their assignments, teachers can establish reinforcement systems in which they earn rewards for their efforts. One example would be to give students a token each time they complete a writing assignment or listen to an audiobook while following along in the text. They can then use these tokens in exchange for privileges or tangible items. And these reinforcements should be meaningful and important to the student, such as computer time or tangible items, toys, pens, pencils, or stickers. It's also important to provide positive reinforcement and praise students for their efforts. When you notice that they are making an effort to participate or complete assignments, make sure that you let them know you're aware of that and that they should be proud of the effort that they're making. Setting goals is important for improving reading skills. Setting goals helps us to define target skills and provides information on how students are progressing. Goal setting should be based on the skills that students need to develop and can include improving fluency, increasing sight word knowledge or vocabulary, and knowledge of letter sound patterns in phonics. This is going to depend on the skills and the knowledge of the student and what the student needs to develop. According to Bandura, goals should be specific, able to be completed in the short term, and should be moderately challenging, not too easy and not too difficult. For students in middle grades, instruction in phonological awareness and phonics is essential. Many students need reminders or consistent practice with different spelling patterns and their sounds. So, for example, we could set a goal of improved decoding of words that feature R-controlled vowels. Our objective would be, when presented with a list of 10 words that feature the AR sound, the student will correctly decode 8 out of 10 words. We could also set a goal to help students increase their reading time. So the objective might look like this: The student will listen to an audiobook while reading a printed version 4 times a week for 15 minutes. So the first goal and objective allows the teacher to measure the progress of the student's reading skills, and the second goal allows students to monitor their own reading behavior. In this last segment, I'd like to wrap up this presentation with a few key ideas. Mather and Wendling caution that students with dyslexia may not learn as you and I learn, so it's important to remember that and create learning environments that speak to their needs and focus on how we can best serve them. We also need to identify students' strengths and their talents. Sousa explains that scientists are exploring cognitive strengths of students with dyslexia, and they found that they have some visual advantages. He speculates that this strength may allow them to see the big picture and be more globally aware. And finally, some students may not be identified as having a reading disorder until they're older, and it is important to recognize that intervention at any age can be effective. Students with dyslexia may face a lot of challenges in school and later in life, but it's crucial that we understand that they can be successful students with the right interventions and strategies in place.